I'm Amy Julia Becker, and typically I'm here with you as the host of Reimagining the Good Life. Reimagining the Good Life will be back in just a few weeks, but today I want to share the first episode of my new podcast, Take the Next Step. This is a podcast for families experiencing disability. We've teamed up with our friends at Hope Heals to bring you weekly conversations with fellow parents, therapists, and disability advocates about practical ways to cultivate a thriving future for the whole family. At Take the Next Step, we see your family as a gift to our society and to your local community. Your family matters. Your child matters. We need you among us. In the first episode, I'm talking with Katherine Wolf, author, podcaster, stroke survivor, and co-founder of Hope Heals. Katherine and I talk about what it looks like to live with delight, connect to community, and continue taking steps towards a good future. Starting next week, all the new episodes of Take the Next Step will be released on the Take the Next Step podcast feed. So if you would like to be a subscriber to Take the Next Step, you're going to need to actually go over there and subscribe. So that means going to your favorite podcast app and typing in Take the Next Step and hitting that little subscribe button so that you can receive all of the goodness that is coming up. For now, here's my conversation with Katherine Wolf. Well, hello, Katherine. I always love getting to talk to you, and I'm especially excited for you to be here with me on the inaugural episode of the Take the Next Step podcast. Welcome.
Oh, I am so glad to be here, Amy Julia. There is not much I would not be a part of if you were at the helm. I don't think I would do illegal things. However, short of that, I would be in to be a part of anything that you are dreaming up and executing. And honestly, those things are making the world more of a place of beauty and goodness. So I'm in. You are putting up outposts of beauty and goodness in the world, and I am here for it.
Well, I am so glad you're here for it because you have been so much of the inspiration behind what I hope will be the beauty and goodness of this podcast. As you know, we've talked about things related to what we're going to talk about here today. I'll get to that in a minute for many years. And that has helped me to develop this idea of reimagining disability and doing that by taking delight in our families, for those of us who have families affected by disability, learning how to connect to community, and just take the one next step towards a good future. And when I look back at your story, which I've heard many times, and I'll ask you to tell a little bit of that in just a minute, I just thought you embody those things. You embody a reframing or a reimagining of disability, taking delight even amidst hard circumstances, connecting to community, and continuing to take one step at a time towards a good future and believing that that is possible. So that's why I really wanted to have you on here, especially for this first episode today. And I thought maybe I could just ask you, for listeners who don't know who you are or how you came to be deeply involved in the disability community, will you just give us like the cliff notes of your story?
Sure. As a typically able-bodied 26-year-old with no health problems, no medical history, no family history, no indication there was anything wrong. As a new mother and somewhat newlywed, I suffered a massive brainstem stroke from a birth defect called an AVM, arterial venous malformation, that I had under my brainstem. And when the mass ruptured, it caused the massive stroke that nearly took my life. I had a very, very near fatal massive stroke and subsequently became severely disabled, as I largely remain today, even though, as you know, it is not holding me back to have some limitations.
Yeah. So will you fast forward us just a little bit? So give us a sense of, I know you had a long kind of initial recovery and now have a very full life that would not be marked by thinking about, being in the hospital and recovering all the time. So will you just give us a little bit more of what's now been over a decade, a long time?
It has been. It's been 17 and a half years. So I always like to lead with the reality that this has been a slow burn. This isn't like I woke up out of bed
Yeah.
after a stroke and was like, I want to do all these really cool things with my life now, and I'm completely stepping into the disability community with both feet. No, it was initially 5 years of really
Mm,
kind of trying to come up for air and recognize how I could live a life turned upside down. I could no longer drive a car. And I'd been typically able before. I
right.
could no longer see. My eyes do not track to this day. I'm deaf in one ear. Obviously, as you can see, maybe our listeners can't.
Yeah.
My face is paralyzed on one side. I have a hand that no longer has fine motor coordination. I have to use a walker to walk. I mean, there's just a lot that remains in the story. And yet, after those first initial just 5 or so years and continually processing and marinating, my husband and I have gone on to launch a ministry called Hope Heals, where we just get to share our hope with our world and create sacred spaces of
Mm,
belonging for others. And we do that through a glorious camp where you have been both a teacher and a camper, and it's glorious. And my husband and I our ministry opened a coffee shop called Mend Coffee and Goods in Atlanta that employs half our staff with disabilities on the outside of their bodies. And we've written 3 books, and I do a lot of speaking. And above all, I get to create the sacred space of encouragement at the coffee date
mm,
and a phone call and get to show up and I believe do the next right thing, which is be present. Show up
mm.
with my whole heart, even when it's hard, and love deeply, even when it feels entirely unsafe. So that's a bit, I guess, of who I am, Amy Julia. Feel free to fill in anything you want.
Well, there's so much I could say,
Oh,
which includes the fact that I have, yes, loved being at camp, loved coming to men, loved seeing and reading the different books that you have written, both with your husband Jay and with your sister-in-law Alex. And just for anyone here who's not subscribed to the Hope Note, which also contains some of those thoughts, there it's just a wonderful email that I receive every couple of weeks, and I'm so grateful for. And throughout all of that, you speak and write about essentially reframing or reimagining your both present and future realities. And I'm just wondering, like, for people who are listening to this, maybe they're like you and are experiencing disability personally. Maybe they're like me and have a family member who is experiencing disability. But either way, we get messages from our culture that disability is a burden and a tragedy and just a bad thing that happens. And that is not the way that you talk about your life or your experience. Although you also don't go down the like toxic positivity route. So I'm just curious, like, what has helped you to reimagine disability and really just to reimagine your life? What are some things that might help others and have helped you?
yeah, good question. Um, well, probably the most basic thing that I have done that I would implore all of your listeners to do is to go outside of yourself. I
Mm,
think there can be such a intense focus on ourselves when we're hurting
mm,
and there's hardship of any kind that we look inward and are really navel gazing. And I think one of my great strengths, which I don't take credit for this at all, I think God really did a move in my heart to
mm,
say, go out with this pain, see a world that needs what you got.
mm.
You need to share and minister to a hurting world. So I think that's been actually a big part. I hope that's not completely random to share that, but it's just the truth.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not um, almost harnessing what's been happening in my story with the hurting stories of others. As you know, Amy Julia, I'm all about just building a bigger table and saying, "Come sit with me." And I think that that's been a cool part of my story.
Well, and one of the things you also say often is if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. And I think what you just spoke to, I think one thing that happens within families affected by disability is the idea that our family, we don't know what our purpose is, our family doesn't matter, or like we're just kind of drawing down on other people's resources rather than contributing. And I love the vision you just gave of getting outside yourself, not only to have a perspective, but also to be able to give to others and to know that you have a purpose within that. And I think one of the things there is, I'm moving on a little bit to this idea of like starting with delight instead of starting with all of the deficits that come and can come in a very real physical or and mental, emotional ways with disability. We know that there's hardship and there is suffering that can come as a part of a disability story, but we also know that joy and belovedness and purpose can kind of wrap around the pain of that story.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I know one of your, again, things that I've heard you say a lot is don't wait to celebrate. So I just would
Yes,
love to ask
yeah.
you to speak about what does it look like to live out that sense of delight, that sense of celebration? How do you do that?
Gosh, I very much love the notion that we have to celebrate in the process. We can't wait to celebrate until the outcome. Because the reality, of course, as human beings, we must learn that outcomes don't always come on earth. So
Hmm.
we might as well get busy celebrating what we do have. So I think I've really tried to train my brain to experience delight that is not the end, that is not
Hmm.
an outcome related delight, that delight is in the process. I mean, and I guess delight and celebration can be somewhat interchangeable words here, that
Yeah.
truly delighting in and celebrating what is in the story, which I think speaks so much to taking the next step to reimagining the good life is very much recognizing what is in the story. There's a lot that's not available
Hmm.
for sure in disability context. However, there are significant things in our stories that can be a part of our future.
So tell me, like, what I'm curious if you have any examples of what it looks like for you to delight in the process and not the outcome, or to celebrate in the here and now rather than the only if this thing happens.
Well, of course, what is top of mind, which is how you know this so well, is our precious Luke 14 banquet, which is not practical to just me, but to our camp. So I should share it first and then I can move on. But at the banquet, we eat dessert first, which is so powerful because we are celebrating right now. We are not waiting to celebrate. So we eat our dessert first, and in a very beautiful, beautiful picture of delighting, all our campers, all our volunteers have a dinner together and celebrate being together and belonging together. We have this fabulous dance party afterwards and just get to spend an evening delighting in each other, in the image that we all bear together. So that's a way to camp, but you probably want to know me personally, I'm guessing.
I'm
And I
curious
guess
about that too. Yes.
yes, and your specific question is where is there delight
Just do
in
you have
my
any
own?
practices of delight or of gratitude, things that are just kind of anchors in a daily way that someone could take from and be like, "Oh, I could do that. That would take 1 minute or 3 minutes."
Absolutely, I have tons. So one super easy, low-hanging fruit, nothing is required at all, is simply when the lights are out, when your head hits the pillow, spend the moment before you fall asleep recognizing through the landscape of the whole day what is their gratitude for in this
Mhm.
day. This day that has been, that is about to end, what happened to me? And I think when we start to pay attention to what we are paying attention to, it changes how we think. That's a Kurt Thompson, not Katherine Wolf thought. That
Yep.
truly, I'm going to choose what to remember from this day, what stands out,
Mm,
and let it be the right stuff. Lord, let me look in my life at the landscape of this day and pick out these special moments I'm not going to forget or pass by. Also, in those moments, the gratitude can be minuscule. Sometimes my gratitude is my sheets are so comfortable on my bed. I love the sheets on my bed right now. They feel so soft. I feel so good. I love this moment. In fact, I really tried to go next level and start kind of giving myself a little hug in bed and saying, like, I love my life.
mm.
I love my life. I love this story. And I think it's doing something powerful to my brain. It's kind of a practice in recent years is I really want to deeply, truly love the story God is writing. And it would be tempting when my head hits the pillow and when I wake up in the morning to think about a lot of issues in my life. In case your listeners think my life is perfect, it's not. It has a lot of challenges connected to the disability and stroke, and a whole lot of challenges not at all connected to that. I
Right.
got just a whole gamut of big issues happening. So there's a lot that could consume me both morning and night if I let it, and I don't.
Yeah, I love that idea of especially knowing that sleep is where we often make our long-term memories. Like that's how our brain does that. And so to feed our brain with true memories from the day or experiences even in the moment of lying in your sheets and to put bank those in that long-term place of sure, amidst a lot of hardship and pain, guess what else is here and what I'm choosing to remember. I think that's really beautiful. I also wanted to ask you about the idea of like supportive community, because I know that one of the really prompts for founding Hope Heals for you and Jay was the amount of community that really did support you both right after and for years after your stroke. And so I was thinking about, again, just if you could speak a little bit to that experience personally, but then I would also love to talk about how people who are feeling really isolated again, if there are any practices or like quick little things they can do to connect to community. So the first is just your story, but the second is like, what do we do when we don't have a whole church family that rallies around us and we are feeling really alone?
Yeah. Oh, goodness, totally. Very much, and in a completely unrelatable way that is just for me personally, since you asked, we had a lot of community that rallied and stayed and kind of went crazy, like poured it out to us.
Yeah.
We had people bringing meals to the hospital for my family to eat because I couldn't even eat food yet for months. I mean, truly, we were the leaders of a very large Sunday school class at our church. My
Mm.
husband's dad is a pastor of a large church in Montgomery, Alabama. Um, my family in my hometown of Athens, Georgia, it's very tight knit, large community vibes in a small town, which happens. So there was just support across the board, like the
Yeah.
whole lot of it. However, that could just stop with me. Like, yeah, cool story, Catherine. That's great. But I'm not about that. Like, that's cool. And I love that that happened. But that's not most people's stories. They have a
Right.
ton of built in community when the bottom falls out. So, what I would say to that, and to like our precious camp community, I say it every summer. Everybody wants to live out Hope Hills Camp all year long. So I get to say, you get to be the one to create the community of your dreams. Is it
Mm.
going to be exactly like Hope Hills Camp or exactly like this other cool thing you heard about? No, but it's going to be something. And when you go look for the person who does not have the people either, then you
Mm-hmm.
become a group. And it's fascinating. I love the passage of scripture from Luke 14, the passage the banquet is based on, that the rich man goes out and finds the misfits, brings them to the table, the people who can't pay him back, the people who aren't the cool, beautiful, rich people, but no, the people having a hard time. And he says, come sit at my table. And he's found his people. And I think that's what we all must do.
I love that. And I love having been at those tables, the Luke 14 banquet at camp, but also in just life with our daughter with Down syndrome has invited me into tables that I might not have sat at otherwise, and been able to experience community and support that I might not have otherwise. And so I love that sense again of a purpose that is outside of ourselves, where this experience of whether it's being a person with a disability or a family member affected by someone in your family having disability, that sense of having a purpose, which involves, yes, caring for ourselves, but also bringing other people together and using these experiences that can seem really hard to actually become something really good and beautiful.
Totally. I listened to a podcast a couple of days ago where the podcaster was unpacking that David Brooks deep dived a research study on 142 countries where
Hmm.
happiness, you may have read about this as well,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
sure,
yes, yes. But tell it.
the
Yeah, go.
happiness study. And when
Yeah.
it boils down to it, the happiest countries and going up are the opposite of where the quality of life is going up or getting better and better. So it kind of makes no sense, except it's about purpose.
Yeah.
It's consumption versus contribution. That when there's contribution being made, when there's purpose, you are happier
Mm.
than when you are purely just consuming. And I think that could translate so beautifully and importantly to our population, that the contributing is where delight can be found,
But
not in.
also, I think like so many people, if you take our culture's understanding of disability as your frame, part of what's problematic is the idea that if you're disabled, you can't contribute, which is totally false. And part of why we're here is to say we don't believe that. We're giving
Yeah,
each other a high five, right?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's part of what we want to do is actually be able to empower families to know that they have something to contribute and it really matters. It really matters in our world. So
Absolutely.
I like the last thing I wanted to ask you about is this idea of taking one next step towards a good future, because it can be so overwhelming to have medical and logistical demands, to have family problems, just to need to respond to email. I mean, there's so much that just feels totally overwhelming, and you layer disability onto that, and it can just be like, it's too much for me. And so I'm curious what you do to kind of keep going. You've talked about like having gratitude for the present moment. I'm now thinking about how do we kind of hold on to hope in a manageable way, in a day to day, I can actually believe there's a good future for me and for my family. How do you do that?
I think for me, what has been so important is to recognize that life is not supposed to be easy and
Hmm.
not going to be easy. And that switch has unlocked something amazing in me, that I kind of live with the reality that all is not okay, all is
Hmm.
not well at all. But I can still very deeply somewhere inside know that all is not lost. And
Hmm.
so I'm kind of choosing to live in that tension every day. And I think it changes how I feel about my life. I know too much to think everything's okay. It's not. I mean, you've been to camp. We're burying campers left and right after camp.
Yeah.
It's very, very sad on the one hand. Absolutely. That is true. But two things can be true. It can be incredibly sad, and there can be incredible hope and joy in the very same story.
Hmm.
So I think that's probably Not practical at all. Sorry, Amy Julia, you're wanting something practical. What can I tell you that's relatable? That's one next step in my story. I guess book writing is always something everybody wants to know. How do you write a book? That's so overwhelming. You do it this way, guys. You open your laptop, you say, I've got 10 minutes and I'm not doing anything else. I refuse to get distracted. My fingers are going to move on the keys of the typeboard for 10 minutes and we're going to see what comes out.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's how you start to write a book. That's the most absolutely unsexy way ever. And that's the truth. You just do the thing. And that's probably part of the next right thing is do the thing.
Totally. And just literally for me, when I get overwhelmed, whether it is with something like writing a book or, I don't know, Penny turning 18 and thinking about Social Security. And it's like, okay, can I come up instead of with, oh my gosh, over the next year, I have to do 1,700 things to help make this happen. But it's like, but is there one thing? And is there one thing I could do today? And then I kind of start just moving. As you said, it's like you start taking one step at a time. You start writing one word at a time, that you start talking to one person at a time. And even if the next step is literally to say, my next step, I've had this before. My next step is to talk to someone else and say, I don't know what to do. So now I've got something to do, which is tell someone else I don't know what to do because maybe they can help. And almost always they actually can. So I think that's actually a great encouragement and visual, the idea of writing a book for so many people, whatever it is that is feeling overwhelming. And like, I just am crushed by the weight of all the things. Okay, but is there one thing, even if it's simply saying, this is crushing me right now. What am I going to do? The one thing you can do that helps you move forward and to trust that there is a good future in store.
I love that. I am a huge advocate for some talk therapy. Talk it out. So I love that. That one next step is tell somebody you're overwhelmed and not doing okay. Talk to somebody about what's going on and see how it helps to begin to sort out what's happening up here. That's a great one.
Well, Katherine, thank you so much. I know we could talk for like 17 more hours right now, but we are going to, knowing that we've got busy people with sometimes overwhelming lives listening to this podcast, we're just going to say that there are so many more resources available through the Ministry of Hope Heals and through Katherine's writing and speaking. We will link to all of that. And we will just say thank you for giving us just these like really actionable ideas, whether that's lying in bed and being grateful for our sheets or taking that one next step by saying I'm overwhelmed or looking for the people who can come to our tables. Thank you so much for all of that today.
Oh my goodness. What a blessing. What a profound impact this work has. Families feel trapped, hopeless. For you to just be at the helm of helping them navigate the darkness is just so important. I'm just so proud to be your friend.
Well, I am so grateful to be your friend and to be a friend of Hope Heals. So thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to this very first episode of Take the Next Step. It's so exciting. Starting next week, all new episodes will be released on the Take the Next Step with Amy Julia Becker podcast feed. So if you want to hear next week's conversation, that's with therapist Sissy Goff about how parents can delight in our children. If you want to hear that, you are going to need to go subscribe now. And that means just look it up in your podcast feed and click follow or subscribe or whatever the little button says. And then we'll be back next week. We have many beautiful conversations ahead. In addition to Sissy, I'm going to be talking with Jordan Arrighetti from Support Now, with Eric Carter from Baylor University, with some authors and podcasters like Heather Avis, Jillian Benfield, Sho Baraka, and more. I'm so excited for these conversations and to share them with you. I'm going to say it one more time. Pull out your phone, search for Take the Next Step. You can subscribe and hear all these conversations. And we really want other people to know about this podcast too. If you are willing to be a part of spreading the word, first of all, you can share it with other people in the very old school way of word of mouth. You also could rate it or review it because that helps the algorithm know that other people should hear about this show. So Be a part of that if you are wanting to make sure that you and others do not miss what's coming next. This show is produced in partnership with gratitude with our friends at Hope Heals. Hope Heals is a nonprofit that creates sacred spaces of belonging and belovedness for families affected by disabilities to experience sustaining hope in the context of interability communities. I would love to hear any questions or suggestions you have. Please send them my way at amyjuliabeckerwriter@gmail.com. Share, rate, review, all the things so other people know this is out there. Finally, I want to thank Jake Hansen for editing this podcast, Amber Beery for doing everything else to make sure it happens behind the scenes. And I want to thank you for being here. I hope you leave this time with encouragement to start with delight, connect to community, and take the next small step toward a good future for your family.